Welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary, Ashton, and this is our Lucha Underground review. And we just keep moving along towards Ultima Lucha, and tonight's episode of Lucha Underground, like every other, thoroughly entertaining, solid matches, great cinematic segments. The hype for Ultima Lucha is so real. I can't wait for it. Ashton, what'd you think of it?
I think it's safe to say that Lucha Underground was miles ahead of NXT tonight.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Lucha Underground and NXT have kind of been going back and forth over the last, if we're being perfectly realistic, over the last 9 months at this point. But we've really been paying really close attention to it for the last, maybe 3 months. Just because the whole dynamic has been getting so interesting, because it'll be one of those things where Lucha Underground, it's absolutely consistent. It is always, on a scale from 1 to 10, Lucha Underground never dips below an 8.
Right.
Whereas NXT might dip down to a 6, but then NXT also has these shows that are just amazing, 9.5 to 10 out of 10 shows. And even though Lucha Underground never dips below an 8, there are very rare occasions where NXT just kind of one-ups Lucha Underground. Not this week, dude. Not at all. Not even close. Lucha Underground was amazing this week, and NXT was okay, but I would say that this week's NXT was more like a 6 than an 8 or a 9, and I would definitely say that this episode of Lucha Underground was a solid 8.5 to a 9.
Yeah, I think you echoed my sentiments to the letter. So with that said, let's get right into our first segment, Heat of the Night. No heats of the night tonight, no nitpicks. I loved everything Lucha Underground did here. They really maximized their hour with all the storylines, heading into Ultima Lucha. And yeah, just no complaints. What about you, Ashton?
I have a little bitty nitpick.
Okay.
And it's funny because anytime I ever have a problem with Lucha Underground, it's never anything to do with storylines or booking or writing or anything like that. It's always something in ring. Before, I've complained about them doing too many suicide dives and kind of accepted that because it's Lucha and that's just what they do. And then at one point I complained about people recovering too fast. And another point I talked about Sexy Star not selling enough. So it's all in-ring stuff, which is weird because that's usually the stuff that I try to avoid having problems with. But tonight specifically, I feel like Drago went about his match with Hernandez like it was just another match. And I feel like this should have been a bigger deal for Drago because Hernandez has now either directly or indirectly cost him the Lucha Underground Championship twice.
Yeah.
And Drago didn't do anything different tonight than he would have done if it was, say, in his Best of 5 series with Aerostar.
So I think what you're kind of getting at is you wanted Drago to kind of just approach this whole thing differently, maybe be more aggressive, more venomous.
More aggressive and act like this is personal, and to me, that's because it is personal. Hernandez has made it personal by just singling out Drago, and like I said, in one way or another, he has cost Drago the Lucha Underground Championship 2 times now.
Right. Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, I feel like Hernandez was taking this more personally than Drago was. And if anyone should have been doing that, it should have been Drago. So, I mean, I'm assuming they're probably going to have a rematch, given the context of the match tonight. But when and if they do, I really want Drago to up the aggressiveness and really bring that babyface fire because, man, this just felt like Drago was I'm not going to say going through the motions because it never feels like Drago's going through the motions, but this didn't feel like a special match for Drago when I definitely think it should have.
And it should especially be a big deal when you're, raising the ire of a character that's supposed to be a dragon.
Yeah.
That should be a really huge deal. Maybe they're just waiting for that explosion potentially at Ultima Lucha. I don't know. But I can certainly see where you're coming from because Hernandez has really put Drago through a lot, and he continued to tonight, which we'll get to, when we come to the match to review. So I can sympathize with your viewpoint. With that said, is there anything else you want to say?
No, that was the big thing for me. And it wasn't even huge. That was just the only thing that I really wanted to remember to mention.
Absolutely. So with that said, guys, let us get right on to our Lucha Underground review. We open with a very lengthy recap video package just highlighting all the storylines that are going to be featured on tonight's show. And then, am I mistaken, Ashton, in saying that our first thing was what was it, Texano and Daivari, or was it the cinematic segment with Cueto and Chavo? What came first?
It was in Cueto's office. Chavo is ready for Cueto to honor his little request that he had in exchange for the Black Lotus. Cueto says, well, you got the crew, you got Blue Demon on a silver platter, and now what is it that you wanted again? And Chavo was just like, are you serious? And then Cueto's like, oh, I'm just kidding. I know you want a title match. And he's like, yeah, you got it tonight. And he even says, like, if you want a title match tonight, you've got it. And then Chavo was just like, no DQ? And Cueto was like, anything for you, my friend. And then Chavo was just like, really? Anything? Well, how do we get rid of Konnan? And Cueto said, well, what I'll do is I'll make it so that if Konnan gets involved, you automatically win the championship. So the odds are, let me just put it this way. The DAC is about as stacked as it's ever been against Prince Puma.
Can I just say, too, I love how a character like Chavo got in this position to begin with. Because he's never been a guy, to be really dominant on Lucha Underground, in ring with wins and losses. So he pretty much politics his way, by currying, favor with Dario Cueto into the world title picture. I think that is so
Typical
perfect.
Guerrero.
Typical Guerrero, and more so typical Chavo. It's so in line, with him to do something like this. And, yeah, I just really appreciated that. And I thought this was a really solid cinematic segment. Kind of sets the tone, Prince Puma once again having to have this climb to Ultima Lucha, whereas Muertes, I mean, he's set for Ultima Lucha. He's not going to have to vie for his spot, I don't think. I don't think anybody would even have the gall to challenge him for his spot, where Prince Puma, I wouldn't be surprised if every week now leading up to Ultima Lucha, it's a different kind of title defense, or at least every other week. We're going to know Muertes versus Prince Puma pretty much at Ultima Lucha in a kayfabe sense with how many rings he has to jump through. So, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, do you want to go to our first match of the night?
Absolutely.
As you were saying earlier, DelAvar Daivari with Big Ryck at ringside, it's worth mentioning, versus Texano. And this was a solid match. I enjoyed the story and the psychology in this match. At one point, Big Ryck gets up on the apron with the Texano's bull rope, and he looks like he's going to go after Texano with it, but Texano kind of goes towards him. He throws a punch, and Texano ducks it, and then he nails him with a super kick, and that allows Texano to actually get an advantage in this match. He ended up winning by hitting Daivari with a sit-out powerbomb, almost like a Batista bomb, but better.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you pretty much just covered all the points of the matchup. One thing I really wanted to say, though, I really appreciated this match. It was kind of disheartening to see, other people this match, it's like raw quality, this and that. I really appreciated the vicious psychology of DelAvar Daivari, and I thought that was really underappreciated by a lot of viewers. Because you got Texano, who's this impressive-looking guy. I mean, if you keep up with AAA, he's got the credentials, very legitimate competitor. And you have DelAvar Daivari, who, let's be honest, he's really staking his claim here. Yeah, he has the WWE experience and the brief TNA experience, but it really seems like he's casting his lot in Lucha Underground. And he just, takes Texano down, and he's really working over that leg. I really appreciated the psychology, because Daivari isn't a bigger guy. He's not like one of these monsters. He's not like one of these high-flying heel luchadors like, say, a Jack Evans. So he's got to find something that's unique to him, and he just chops guys down to size. That seems like his thing, at least is indicative of this matchup. And
he's a luchador with a Napoleon complex.
Exactly. That's actually beautifully said. We'll go with that. And I just really appreciated that, and I just really wanted to highlight that, because that's what really made this match for me. I love the story that was being told, and commentary certainly did a vital service by really creating the dichotomy between, hey, DelAvar Daivari, white collar, Texano, blue collar kind of guy. And, it worked. I really enjoyed this match.
Yeah, it was, like I said, the main things to me that really stood out about this match were the story being told and the psychology. And you pretty much just hit on all the reasons why I like that stuff.
Right.
So, all right. Well, like we said, Texano wins. Up next, we had a couple of backstage segments. I really enjoyed both of these, both involving Konnan, oddly enough. But the first one, Konnan's given Puma a little bit of a pep talk, trying to sort of psych him out so that he doesn't, get inside his own head about the whole Chavo thing or the Muertes thing, because Puma's working out, and Konnan's just like, well, Chavo's a lot of things. He's a liar, he's a stealer, or he's a cheat, and all this stuff. But one thing he's not is a champion. And then, like I said, he just kind of gave Puma a little bit of a pep talk, and I think he brought up Mil Muertes and not worrying about him not looking ahead. And then Catrina shows up, and Catrina tells Puma that he's going to need all the help he can get at Ultima Lucha because Mil Muertes is going to destroy anyone who gets between him and his title. And then Muertes actually shows up, or at least an image of Muertes, I don't know. And we get a stare down between Muertes and Puma for the first time this season. For the first time ever, I guess I could say. And then after a few seconds, it looked almost like, and that's a cool thing too, it looked almost like Puma winced a little bit while he was staring at Muertes. Like he had almost like a little bit of a look of pain in his face at one point. But then, the lights flash and Muertes and Catrina both disappear. But then another thing I really like, because this hasn't really ever happened before with Muertes, Konnan assures Puma, look, man, it's all mind games. You shouldn't let it affect you. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too, because Konnan, he's the veteran. He's like the mouthpiece. He's this guy that's, been up and down the road, and he's kind of grooming Prince Puma to be the ideal Lucha Underground champion. So for him to just keep his cool, I think it definitely shows that disparity in experience, which shows the vital nature of the partnership. So
Right.
I actually really like it on that level. And between the two guys themselves, Muertes and Puma, I loved it, man. I mean, create that image of those two staring at each other into a poster, and you got Ultima Lucha right there.
Yeah.
Loved it, man. Loved it. I love the whole vibe of Mil Muertes. You and I have been big on him since, the first time we saw him in Lucha Underground. I mean, we've been following season 1 from the jump. And, he's just a great character, and I just love everything about Mil Muertes. And Puma is the most legit champion you could have going into your biggest show of the season. It's going to be an amazing title match because both of these guys are built up so well, and that confrontation actually meant something to me. Like, I got excited seeing those two stare each other down, so it's going to be a barn burner for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. But then we went to a commercial, but when we came back, we had another backstage segment involving Konnan, like I said. This time, though, he isn't settling to just, give Puma a pep talk and let him go out there on his own. He's actually talking to somebody in the shadows in the locker room, and I didn't catch exactly what he said, but I know that at the end of the day, he was asking whoever it was if they would have Puma's back if he needed it.
Absolutely. I love, the intrigue. Who is Konnan pocketed? It's kind of like an ace in the hole, seeing as how he can't get involved with his cane.
Yep.
And, it leaves that intrigue. I mean, you know me, like, I was speculating aloud to you, like, could it be Rey Mysterio? Like, I'm immediately thinking, is this going to be the way they debut a new talent before Ultima Lucha? But all would be revealed later in the night, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But, yeah, great segment, built a lot of intrigue for the main event.
And, yeah, I do remember specifically Konnan brought up Blue Demon, which before it kind of clicked with me that he brought up Blue Demon as an outside entity, I was thinking that it was going to end up being Blue Demon that he was talking to. But no, it actually ended up being someone else, and we'll talk about that when we get to the main event. But for now, we have our second match of the night, Hernandez versus Drago. We already talked about this briefly, just as far as the fact that Drago, it seemed like he didn't take it quite as seriously as I would have hoped. But still, I mean, this match, I feel like this match wasn't so much meant to be, oh wow, this match was really good, as it was, oh my god, this match set up for something amazing in the future.
Exactly, and you definitely got that vibe. Hernandez continues to do amazing heel work.
And because of that, dude, I think that, honestly, that almost makes me want to forgive my little nitpick that we had in Heat of the Night, because, like, this wasn't their last match. This wasn't the blow-off.
Certainly not, and that was indicative towards the final few minutes.
Yeah,
Hernandez, he does a border toss on the apron to Drago, but Drago, still has the fight in him, and I think Hernandez was just totally done with it. He was over it. So he grabs a nearby fan, and he
This was so scary. Like, dude, could you imagine being that fan in the Lucha Underground crowd, and next thing you know, Hernandez takes his sights off of Drago and looks at you and picks you up out of your seat and, like, gets up in your personal space, just totally bursts that personal bubble and rips your freaking belt off. So now not only does it almost seem like he's trying to get in your pants, but now he has literally taken something from you that belongs to you. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. And it was probably, if we're being realistic and talking just wrestling, it was probably a plan, but if there's any company on the planet that would do this exact spot without having a plan in place, it's Lucha freaking Underground.
And that would be quite a ballsy risk if that was the case, because you know how traumatized the fan would be. They probably secretly loved it, like, oh my god, I interacted with a wrestler. At least I would hope that's how it would go. That's how I would react.
Yeah.
And then Hernandez is just choking Drago out with the belt, which calls for disqualification, so Drago wins. And then I love the defiance. Like, everything about Hernandez as a heel character on Lucha Underground just works and clicks with me so well. Because then he gets on a mic and he says, well, you dumbass fans need to understand. It's like, oh, shit, he's calling everybody out. I think he pretty much just says, like, I could destroy anybody. I could beat anybody's ass.
No, he actually goes a step further. He shatters a level of kayfabe. He said, what you dumbass fans need to realize is that dragons aren't real.
Right.
And that this Vato isn't a dragon, he's just a man.
And then, like, yeah, he does say, like, I could beat anybody up, and, you know, you want to come try me, you know, come in here and do it. So, like, he's really laying down the gauntlet to the fans, saying dragons aren't real. Like, he's just blowing the whole thing up.
Yeah.
And honestly,
it's
dude,
so great because I feel like the entire sort of veil of Lucha Underground has been built up this season with, like, the mysticism and the mythos and the supernatural and all this stuff, like the Mil Muertes and the Drago and all this stuff. And now tonight, we have Konnan telling Puma, look, man, it's all head games. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Don't let it affect you. And now we have Hernandez coming out and being like, there's no such thing as dragons, you marks.
You know what, dude? And I hope, you know, when they do have their rematch, I would like to see the finish. And if anybody would do a finish like that, it would be Lucha Underground being like Drago breathes some kind of fire or something. And, like, that's just how they are, like, so
my
dragons
God.
are. Like,
Yes.
he needs his
I mean, I loved the poison mist, but if they could find a way to make that work, oh my God.
Well, I know ECW used to do fireballs and stuff. I don't know, like, regulations and stuff of the temple. Like, again, if we're talking real here.
Oh, dude, and that's the thing, too, is that, like, the fireball spot is actually a pretty notorious spot in wrestling. It's not like it's just an ECW thing. Like, that goes back to, like, past, like, Terry Funk and all that stuff. And, yeah, dude, like, if they could actually find a way to make the fireball spot have that deep of a meaning that it's literally coming from a guy claiming to be a dragon. Lucha Underground, greatest of all time.
Definitely. I mean, even if you don't want to do a fireball, and maybe you want to kind of do a blend of, like, a match and a cinematic segment where, like,
I was even going to say that. Like, I would love it if after Drago, okay, so Drago beats Hernandez in their big blow-off match, and then, like, you see Hernandez in the parking lot walking to his car, and he just gets eaten by a legit dragon.
Yeah, something like that. Because, see, let me just put it to you guys succinctly. What I want from this feud is for Hernandez's lack of belief to come back and bite him in the ass.
Yes!
Like, that's
oh, my God. Yes! That is so perfect! Lucha Underground, I am putting all of my faith in you right now. I believe in you. I know that you know how to make this stuff work. I want this so bad.
Yeah, I want it too, and I knew I wanted it the moment that Hernandez cut that promo. Because to me, there's no other comeuppance given the mythos of Drago, what Hernandez has subjected him to, and then his lack of belief, his blatant lack of belief on top of that. This needs to be the comeuppance. It needs to be like some Liu Kang shit. Drago turns into his form, and he either eats Hernandez or he burns him to a crisp. Because if I can watch a guy in Matanza eat Bale's face, you cannot tell me that is impossible for Drago. Because all bets are off when you show me a scene like that. And that's just really how I feel about it.
Yeah, I completely agree, dude. That's brilliant. I'm so glad you thought of that, because that's probably also what Lucha Underground thought of, which means we're going to see it.
Hopefully.
Oh my God. I really hope we're not giving them more credit than they deserve, because I feel like they deserve all the credit in the world. And if they come through with this,
greatest of all time, baby.
Oh yeah. I mean, as if they hadn't sealed that little title up already. All right. Up next, we have another backstage segment. This time it's Chavo. And it's pretty much the same thing that we got with Puma earlier, where Catrina shows up, warns him, if you win tonight, your celebration is going to be short-lived, because Mil Muertes is going to destroy whoever holds the Lucha Underground Championship. Mil shows up. Chavo tells him, well, then I guess I'll see you both at Ultima Lucha. And then Mil kind of freaks out a little bit, and we cut to the ring.
Absolutely. Just solid segment. Not really much we can say. It's just them, treating both possibilities equally, equal intimidation. And nothing really more you can say here, because I already have in my mind, obviously, like, where we're going to go. But I'm just glad that Lucha Underground treats it with enough ambiguity, like, well, are you sure? And they just be like, no. So, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, we had Marty the Moth Martinez. Man, when you say that they're throwing someone to the wolves, normally it's like, oh, someone's debuting in WWE against Dolph Ziggler? But no, this is Alberto freaking El Patron. This is the WWE equivalent to what Kevin Owens did, basically, except, sadly, Marty the Moth didn't put up quite as much of a fight.
Well, I still consider Marty the Moth a winner because Melissa Santos actually did flap her arm one time with Marty the Moth.
Dude, I marked out when I saw that. He's behind her doing it, and he does it like so frequently. Every time, there's no stopping. He just keeps doing it, and she says Marty, and then she waves her arm. The Moth Martinez. That was so good.
Because of that little thing there, I just gotta say, Melissa Santos, you are wonderful. You
I
are
know,
absolutely adorable, and we love you. So just sending our love there.
Yeah, Melissa Santos is amazing. Marty the Moth is amazing. This, you know what? The only reason this wasn't a heat of the night for me is because I get it with the Marty the Moth story. Like, you really want to kind of build him up from the ground up. I don't know, man. I feel like this match should have been even just a tiny bit longer. Just have the Moth show a little something. Do a drop kick, do a pump kick, anything. But no, this is pretty much Alberto El Patron destroys Marty the Moth. Marty the Moth gets a few punches in, and then Alberto's just like, well, I've beat him up enough. Time to put the arm bar in. And he hits the double knees to the arm drop down, and then immediately goes for the cross arm breaker, and Marty taps out. So a little bit of a disappointing match, but I understand why they're doing it this way because and I told this to you when we were watching it. When Marty the Moth, and I'm saying when, not if, when Marty the Moth wins the Lucha Underground Championship, whether it's in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't care, it is going to be the biggest Lucha Underground Championship victory celebration ever because they are building him up as if he entered the temple as a fan. So if this doesn't get to a point where the people are living vicariously through him, I will be amazed because that's exactly what this has the potential to be.
Several points I want to make here. First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiments there. Secondly, if you're a fan of Marty the Moth, you've got to be feeling really good right now. And I say that sincerely because first match, Prince Puma. Second matchup, medallion match. Third match against the AAA champion. Say what you will about the quality of those matches, but the idea that that's where he is billed consistently on Lucha Underground card when he is a part of the tapings, that's pretty significant to me.
Yeah, it's almost like now I want to see, okay, what does Marty the Moth do against El Mariachi Loco? Like, I feel like the way that the fact that he I wouldn't necessarily say that he took Prince Puma to the limit, but he held his own. And I mean, he got some offense in on Alberto, and he looked great in that 4-way against Brian Cage and the Mac, and who else was in that? Aerostar?
I believe Aerostar,
yeah, because Aerostar ended up winning it. So yeah, I mean, he looked really good in that match. He had a bunch of really, really close near falls, and yeah, he stood his own in that match. So what if he goes against a guy that's kind of like, not quite a jobber, but like lower mid-card, like a El Mariachi Loco, maybe like a Ricky Mandel if he's still around, or like a Vinny Massaro, those kind of guys who aren't, I wouldn't call them jobbers, but lower mid-card guys. I feel like Marty the Moth would go to work.
Second point I want to make. Not only does it make sense, the aggression here of the squash, because it is Marty the Moth and they're doing that build, let's also keep in mind that this is Alberto's first match back since being thrown through a window. He's got a lot to work through. So it doesn't really surprise me that he's just going to run over the first guy that he sees and just maul him. And plus, here's the thing, and I readily acknowledge this, I'd love to be snarky, John, and I will be in a second. Oh, trust and believe. But Alberto El Patron is a god in these parts. Yeah. He is over, and he's the AAA champion, which is a huge deal culturally and everything. So I understand.
Right. I guess my thing is, this is Lucha Underground, so why would you book the AAA champion to be stronger than the Lucha Underground champion?
And, that's certainly true. That's certainly true, and I think that's a point with a lot of merit. And I really don't have an answer at this moment. I'm just saying, that's probably also where their thinking is at. Right. And, I got to say, I dig I know the other point I wanted to make. What was funny about this matchup was this actually seemed more in line with what you were looking for with Drago versus Hernandez. Because
Yeah.
I just feel like Patron felt like he was seeing Johnny Mundo in Marty the Moth.
Yeah, and that's
he
what I
beat the
wanted.
crap out of him.
Now, obviously, it wouldn't have been a squash match because Hernandez would have put up more of a fight than Marty the Moth did in this match. But yeah, that's what I wanted from Drago in his
Right.
match and Hernandez. But I'm hoping now that that'll just happen to be what we get from Drago in their blow-off match, whether that's the next match or not.
And just a quick side note, I do approve of Patron's ring gear. I thought that very nice
Yeah, the
babyface
blue
look.
works for him.
Yeah, definitely. So now with that said,
the babyface version of Alberto El Patron rocking the baby blue. What can we say?
I know, right? But now with that said, Alberto El Patron felt the need to address his legion of followers, calling out Johnny Mundo.
Johnny Rudo.
Johnny Rudo. I love it, baby. But no, in all, keeping it sincere, it was a great babyface promo. He's really fired up. I love the energy. I love how receptive the crowd is, because if this Johnny Mundo heel experiment is going to work, you need a strong babyface, and they don't get any stronger in these parts. Maybe Prince Puma, of course, but Alberto El Patron is like way up there. So great energy to see from him. He said, you've awoken something inside of me, and it's vicious, it's crazy, it's ruthless, it's violent. And he says, not only was you throwing me through a window, the biggest mistake of your life, it is your last, because at Ultima Lucha, I am going to rip your face to pieces. To which I respond that you've got nothing. But, it was a good promo nonetheless, so I'll give him credit. Those are some really, really impressive words there by Alberto El Patron, so...
Some really impressive words, huh?
Yeah, so some really impressive. I mean, it's not going to mean anything because we're just going to, we're going to shatter your face all over again. But impressive words.
What did his face do to deserve that?
It existed. It was birthed.
Yeah.
Do I need any more justification than that? No, I don't.
I totally get you.
Yeah.
All right. Oh my God, guys! Just you hear the way his entire persona changes when Johnny Mundo is involved, and you got a little sneak peek of it when Johnny Mundo fought Prince Puma, who John actually really likes.
Yeah.
Just wait until Ultima Lucha when Johnny faces Alberto, who is a guy that I'm sure John respects the hell out of. But yeah. John has always had a little bit of a problem, even back when he was Alberto Del Rio. We never really, and I say we because John and I have been watching wrestling for years now. We never really got into the Alberto Del Rio character, and I mean, the Alberto El Patron thing, he's great. He's so much better now than he was in WWE.
Yes.
But John, I know for a fact, is still pretty freaking salty about the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Patron's the one guy. Like, he's the Austin on the proverbial, Rock's back. That monkey on her back. We gotta beat Patron. And, seeing Johnny Mundo get the win in Ultima Lucha, great momentum heading into Season 2. And let me just say as a side note, too, I am so happy for both guys, and I am so jazzed up for this match, because, obviously I have the personal stake. Obviously, we've been over that to death. But Patron loves working with Lucha Underground. I've read interviews from him. And Mundo, I have never seen him this happy wrestling or heard him this happy, because he said, Lucha Underground has reinvigorated me. It's made me fall back in love with wrestling and work on myself and work on my style. So you were talking about two guys that are in a much happier work environment, much more conducive work environment, and they're going to bring out their best. You know what? As psyched as I am for Puma and Muertes, obviously this is the match I'm looking forward to most for personal reasons, but don't sleep on this match, because this could steal the show. I have very high expectations for this one.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, up next, let's talk about our main event of the evening, Prince Puma versus Chavo Guerrero for the Lucha Underground Championship in a no disqualification match, where if Konnan gets involved or interferes, Chavo Guerrero is automatically crowned the new Lucha Underground champion. And I feel so sorry for Melissa Santos, because she had to be the messenger that it felt like the crowd kind of wanted to shoot when she said that.
Yeah, that's not cool, guys. Yeah. Melissa Santos is innocent in all this, so. But I don't blame them, because it is Chavo, and he has been great at doing the heel work. What did you think about this matchup, Ashton? Because I didn't hate it by any means. It wasn't anything truly exceptional, but then again, it's Chavo. I'm going to be honest, my expectations really weren't that high, and I think it was more about telling a certain story than these guys just going out and having, a scientific kind of clinic wrestling-wise. So right. What did you think of the whole thing?
I thought it was a solid match, actually. I think that this was this is one of those instances where it is far more about the story told than match quality. And I think
Right.
I feel like more wrestling needs to be about that. I feel like there needs to be more promotions that do that. And I'm not necessarily talking about WWE this time, believe it or not, because that's one thing that they have down almost too well. They almost don't put enough of an emphasis on match quality. But yeah, like ROH, PWG, I would even go as far as to say like TNA. Seriously, like if you're having a match just to fill time, you're doing it all wrong.
Exactly. Like, we talk about storytelling over quality. That's kind of the vibe I got from the opener tonight. The first matchup with Daivari versus Texano. And that carried through here. And I think it's successful because, you have Chavo, who's looking really credible right now considering who he's running with. They took out Blue Demon Jr., they got Black Lotus. So Chavo, for all intents and purposes, as a character, is legitimate, and I think that's enough. In fact, I would even argue to a degree that it's more important to be legitimate in character than in ring. Because, really any guy could be legitimate in ring, but if your character isn't, believable enough that, is he sinister enough to take that championship? Where's the investment? And I think Chavo certainly, meets that bar. So yeah, it was good stuff. At one point, it seems like he feigns a knee injury. I don't really know what was like going
Can
on
we
there.
even say for sure that he was feigning it though? Because like he was still selling that injury after the match had been over.
And that's true. So I think, he really was hurt. Puma must have done something, a certain spot in the matchup.
Well, no, I don't know if you actually. I actually saw the spot that it happened. All it was Chavo like bent down, and Puma flipped over him. Like he was coming off the ropes, and Chavo bent over, like the normal spot where like he telegraphs it, where like Chavo would have bent over and Puma kicks him in the face. But this time Puma just went over Chavo's back, and as soon as Puma landed, Chavo started selling that knee.
Right. So interesting. But yeah, then the crew comes in, and they really put the boots to Puma. Now it seems like they're going to set him, like they're holding him down for the frog splash, much like what happened to Blue Demon Jr. I want to say 2 weeks ago. But then Texano comes in and he makes a save, does sit out power bombs, isolates the crew. Then that leaves Chavo alone with Puma. Puma hits the 630, gets the win on Chavo. So, very interesting dynamic here, especially because of the segment we got afterwards, which I guess we'll kind of tie into that discussion here in a second. But Texano, I guess he was freed up after beating DelAvar Daivari just cleanly in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to continue Ultimate Lucha, and this frees Texano up now because now he got involved in the crew's business, this crew 2.0 with Chavo. So, I wonder where they're going to go here.
I don't know, man. What do you think? Where do you think they're going to go?
Can we talk about the segment that happened afterward, just kind of tie it all together, or is there anything else?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, because then we see, like, Chavo already, like, in the back, like, really frustrated over his loss. Then we see Blue Demon Jr. come in, and Chavo at first tenses up, and he says, Chavo, relax. I'm not like you. I don't attack somebody when they're hurt, because I'm a good man, unlike you. And then Chavo says, well, what is it then? Are you just mad because of how pretty much over Texano is, how much people love him? Does it bother you that he's the new face of Mexico and you're more or less just a loser, is pretty much what Chavo drives at. Well, Blue Demon Jr., he snaps at this. He grabs Chavo, slams his face against a locker room door, slams him against the wall, and then raises him up by the throat. So we know that Blue Demon Jr., he's got like that crazy strength it seems to illustrate. And then he says, I am Mexico, Chavo, I am. And he lets go of Chavo. He leaves, but then Chavo's smirking. So Chavo's playing some kind of a mental con here, some psychological warfare. And once again, Lucha Underground shows that it's not interested in doing the paint-by-number story, because that story would be Blue Demon Jr. rallies back, and he gets a measure of revenge on Chavo. But now here, it seems like Chavo is in Blue Demon Jr.'s head, and Texano is now involved as another variable. So now that we've talked about everything, Ashton, where do you think all these pieces fit? What do you think the final cohesive whole is going to be?
It seems to me like Chavo is trying to play Blue Demon and Texano against each other.
Right.
So if I had to guess, I would say probably those two guys are going to have beef.
And it's going to be beef entirely manufactured by Chavo, which is interesting because, you figure Blue Demon Jr., much like I was saying about Patron earlier, but I think even more so because of his status, is very revered in Mexico. Texano, babyface Texano portrayed, because I know he just recently came off the heel run and everything, but he's also very respected and very legitimate in Mexico. A former AAA champion himself before he lost it to Patron. So you've got two guys that really seem to be representing the pride and the honor of Mexico. And now Chavo's been able to turn it from, being his debt that he needs to pay with his flesh to making an issue between these two guys because, who really is Mexico anyway? I mean, I know you guys are concerned with pummeling me, but who's really going to represent Mexico when you do it? And, it's clever and it works. And again, it fits with Guerrero's style. And I think it's an interesting story to tell with Blue Demon Jr., honestly, because he is an older guy. Yep. He is of that legend status. And you see this younger guy in Texano, who I don't even think is in his 30s yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's only maybe 28, 29. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, it's a classic of this old guard versus new guard, and Chavo's just waiting in the wings to pick the bones. I really like it.
Texano is 30.
Texano is 30. Okay, well still though, I think much younger in comparison to Blue Demon Jr., so I think my point stands.
Right.
And yeah, just a good story to tell, and I'm excited to see the resolution.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it kind of says a lot about Chavo that he is able to manufacture beef between other guys.
Definitely. I think it keeps him, despite this loss tonight, as a very credible heel because, again, the character of Chavo is still incredibly effective despite this setback tonight. So I actually really like that.
Definitely, yeah. So, as far as this whole Chavo, Blue Demon, Texano thing goes, do you think that they're going to smarten up and be like, Chavo, you were trying to play us against each other, so now we're both coming for you? Or do you think that this is just going to actually straight up just lead to Texano versus Blue Demon?
Honestly, I could see a triple threat. Texano versus Blue Demon versus Chavo. Just get all that beef in there.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I could actually see Blue Demon Jr. versus Texano as a match on Lucha Underground, TV, not Ultima Lucha. And then just maybe do a triple threat at Ultima Lucha, get all three guys there. The legendary appeal of Blue Demon Jr., you have just the babyfaceness of Texano and how over he is, and then the dastardly heel in Chavo. Seems like it would be a good medley, so we'll see if Lucha Underground takes advantage of that.
Absolutely.
All right, anything else you want to say about this whole thing or tonight's Lucha Underground in general before we move on to our next segment?
No, man. This was a really solid show, and it feels very story-driven, which I love. That's my thing. Like, with wrestling, I can watch PWG shows every freaking day, but it's one of those things where I can also forget about PWG shows every freaking day. Like, they're all the matches are going to be fun to watch, but then an hour and a half later, what is there to talk about other than, oh my god, that match was so good? With Lucha Underground, they're creating memorable content because you are going to be constantly thinking about who's going to do what these characters are going to be, what their motivations are, just everything storyline driven. And it's something that the WWE has been trying to do for a really long time, but they haven't really been succeeding at it probably since, I want to go back as far as maybe 2004, 2003.
Yeah. I mean, what Lucha Underground's doing right now, I mean, I've used the word revolutionary, I think, as early as last week's Lucha Underground TWitWoW. It's just a completely different animal for any kind of wrestling fan, really, whether you're more into the indie scene or you just view WWE as the wrestling sphere, or TNA, or ROH, or any of those. It's just Lucha Underground's completely distinct from all of them, and just what a memorable first season they are creating. And we still got a little bit of gas in the tank for the first season, and they just keep going strong. So with that said,
go as far as to say that we've got a lot left in the tank, John?
Well, if I'm going to do that, I got to put on my Mark Henry. Hey, it's not that easy. I got a lot left in the tank. So yeah, Lucha Underground definitely has a lot left in the tank. But
10 out of 10.
Thank you. With that said, let's get right into our next segment: high spots and low shots. I normally hate to do this because I like getting creative with this segment, but I'm going to have a very straightforward low shot. Marty the Moth. Because, it hurts me too. Patron was probably just looking at Marty the Moth like he was Johnny Mundo, and boy, did he whoop that ass. But it ain't going to be that easy at Ultima Lucha. But for now, Marty the Moth, yeah, your wings just got totally clipped. So.
Oh, you would go there.
I had to.
And going after the Moth's wings, that's messed up.
I don't even know if he's going to be able to flap with those arms after that cross arm breaker, but I digress. Who's your low shot?
I hope he's still selling it in his next match.
Yeah, I hope when he's like flapping, he's like, and then he goes to like grab the arm with every flap. It's like, just, you know, be good stuff.
He uses, I forget what arm it was, but assuming Del Rio or El Patron did the arm breaker to the left arm, like he reaches over with his right arm and forces his left arm to flap with his right hand. Like an assisted arm flap.
Yes.
All right. My low shot. I'm gonna say DelAvar Daivari, just because he had Big Rick's help and he still couldn't get the job done against Texano.
Yeah, that's true. You know, like he had all the advantages in the world and just couldn't capitalize on them. So I think that's a perfect low shot.
Yep.
I am gonna be a bit different with my high spot. My high spot's Hernandez, because he punked everybody out tonight. Like he forcibly took the belt off of a fan and then looked at him like, "Go ahead, sue. I'd like to see you do it." And you know the fan's not going to do it. So it's just fan's just going to sit there and probably hope that he could sell that belt on eBay. But you know, Hernandez is just imposing his will on everybody, and then he lays down the gauntlet to the fans, to the believers of the temple. And you know, you just gotta wonder, like, what's gonna come of that? You know, what are the repercussions of Hernandez's hubris, thinking that he can just bully anybody he wants? He's had that attitude since he first arrived at the temple. He's picked a fight with Drago, and I'm telling you, that lack of belief, I think, is going to bite him in the back. But for tonight, nobody's looking more dominant. Well, yeah, there are contenders, but on this night, match-wise, nobody really looked more dominant to me than Hernandez, just bullying everybody.
Yeah, I can dig that. I think I'm going to kind of pony off your low shot and say that my high spot's going to be Alberto El Patron.
Okay.
Just because he just dominated Marty the Moth. And again, I would say that he looked stronger. If you're looking at common opponents, he looks stronger than Prince Puma right now.
Yeah, definitely. But you know what the really satisfying feeling is? Is when, in the wake of Ultima Lucha, you and I both share Johnny Mundo as our high spot. That's going to be just so glorious after he's done destroying Alberto El Patron. Right. You know, so
right.
just putting that out there.
Hey man, I'm not going to argue with you. You're totally right.
I know. Thank you. See somebody who gets it. You, me, Kevin Owens. We all get it. We all get the big picture. And Adam Cole. Adam Cole!
Well, and Johnny Mundo. You can't forget your boy.
Oh, of course. Well, me and Johnny, you know, forever, man. But in all seriousness, anything else you want to say about Lucha Underground or any of the storylines that we got, like, you know, rushing towards Ultima Lucha here?
No, I just really I enjoyed this show. I've said it a few times already. This show blew NXT this week out of the water.
Absolutely, completely agree, and I'm not going to wait any more on that. So, guys, this has been Lucha Underground. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my cohort and commentary, Ashton. Guys, what did you think of Lucha Underground this week? What was your favorite match of the night? What was your favorite just segment overall of the night? Be sure to take the conversation over to Tweetoff, an amazing pro wrestling group on Facebook. But I get it. You know, maybe if you're not into groups, if groups aren't your thing, Ashton's got you covered. He has created a TWitWoW subreddit where you can talk to him and myself about all things pro wrestling. You can create your own threads, comment on our videos there, whatever your heart desires. And again, guys, Saturday is going to be a huge day for us, because we're going to hulk up. We are going to do live reactions to Beast in the East, the Sumo Hall show where we see Finn Balor taking on Kevin Owens with the NXT Championship. You know, live reactions are always must see on TWitWoW. And then we are breaking new ground with our first ever Ring of Honor review. TWitWoW just keeps expanding, guys. We love you guys for taking the journey with us, and I just really can't wait to see your feedback on that ROH review. You know, so just get hyped for it, because it's coming, and we'll see you then. So until then, tune in, and peace out.